Hello and welcome to the Answer podcast. My name is Paweł Burza and I am joined by Paweł Mielniczuk, the art director for Project RED.
Hey everyone! Today we'll dive into the community management here at CD PROJEKT RED with Amelia Korzycka, expert community and social media manager, and Marcin Momot, global community and social media director.
It's going to be an amazing episode. I can't wait to meet our guests, so let's just meet them. All right, Amelia, Marcin, welcome to the podcast officially. My favorite topic today, community, a topic I feel very familiar with. But before we start, could you both introduce yourselves, especially to the people who are listening to us, so they can associate your name with the sound of your voice? Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, hello, I'm Amelia Korzycka. I'm almost said senior expert community and social media manager at CD PROJEKT RED, and I've been here 11 years already.
Wow.
And counting.
Nice. My name is Marcin Momot, and I'm the Global Community and Social Media Director here at CD PROJEKT RED, and I've been with the company for 15 years now.
Wow.
Nice. I love
Together,
experience.
26 years in
Yeah.
2 seats. It's incredible.
I never thought about it that
Yeah.
way, but whenever you start to combine people's tenures at the company, it always then adds up to like insane numbers.
Yeah.
So it's nice, Pablo, that you brought it up, actually.
Yeah.
A lot of experience. All right, so community. So please let's start from maybe unpacking what actually community means for us in CD PROJEKT RED.
Well, so it's a good question, and to be honest, to me, the term is like the definition is broad, but it's broad by design. So let's say if you played our game, if you played Cyberpunk, or if you played any of the Witcher games, or if you play one of our board games, or read a comic book, or watched Edge Runners, to me, you're part of our community because you, with all the people around the world, share the same passion, share the love for the stuff that we do here at the studio. And obviously, there are people who are, let's say, active on our channels, and they choose to engage with us. You know, they follow us on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter or X. Some people engage in community-driven initiatives such as Reddit. You know, some people also sign up for our Discord server, right? And these people actively engage with us. However, to me, it doesn't matter if you're actively engaging with us or if you're just, playing, watching, whatever we're doing, and you're enjoying it. To me, you're part of the community.
All right.
Beautiful. Because sometimes there's this overall like appearance from outside that community management kind of is boiled down to just posting stuff on social media. But there's this whole like aspect of building, let's say, almost a global society around a certain game in this case, or a certain anime, or a certain product, for example. So would you say that, because as you both introduced yourself, there's the social media aspect and there's the community aspect, and I feel like there is a justification why these two things are there mentioned together. So is it just posting or is there more? I know the answer, but I want to hear it from you.
I think it would be easier to say what we don't do than what we do.
Yeah.
Because the list is really big. Like when the game is in production, we also like play our games, we test our games, we provide our perspective, like, oh, players might not like this, or oh, this is gonna be hit, maybe we should focus on this aspect more. We are part of like our partnerships with our biz dev. Obviously, social media is still a big part of it. We are like obviously the ones pushing the buttons, go live on whether it's a patch update, partnership, a meme, or a fan art, right? We look for those things. We do research, like what our companies, other companies are doing, and is it something maybe we can look at and see how we can maybe do it our own, because we never did it before. So our day-to-day is very long in terms of like those 8 hours. Social media is part of it, but like talking to people, responding to emails, responding to comments, looking for new initiatives that, oh, our players like to do this, maybe we can do this for them. And obviously like partnerships, content creators, all that. So again,
Yes, community
is
ambassadors,
long.
projects. I mean, projects are a big part of our work because, like, one of our values is being ambitious, right? And every time with every release, we're trying to beat what we did for the previous title, and we're trying to do better and more engaging things for our community. You know, if we're thinking about cosplay contests or any sort of contest or any sort of, you know, activation that we can do for any parts of the fandom, like this is something that sometimes takes weeks, months, or even years in extreme cases to deliver.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of also behind the scenes stuff going on that later on then comes out, and then people can enjoy it.
Perfect. I also feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, that community team overall kind of bridges the gap that is in between developers and the community. So
Yes.
the voice of the community can be heard by the developers through the means of the community team. And like you kind of mentioned, like the things that you see early in development that can potentially be good or bad, let's
Yeah.
say, and how they can be received by the community, and also what the community might kind of like to see once the game is launched or when an update is pretty much coming out. So how, in your own view, is this part of like working with developers, working with the community, bridging the gap, and kind of trying to hear like both sides of the world, let's
Yeah.
say?
It is actually important that this bridge goes both ways. So it's not just from dev to community, but also from the community to devs. So whether we release a patch, whether we have, I don't know, hands-on session, we talk to people and try to hear them, what they like, what they dislike, what's missing, and then we do reports. You know, it's part of our job.
So
And
like
then-
sentiment reports.
Yes, sentiment
Okay.
reports, like numbers, like this feature got picked up, or maybe this social media, our social media trend that we used to showcase a feature from the game was actually very likable, and people would love to see that more. Like, for example, we did, that was ages ago for Cyberpunk, when we added more hairstyles, and we added a GIF with different hairstyles. We're like, what hairstyle do you wear today? And we got like massive response to that, asking people like, can we have more? Can we have more hairstyles? We're like, there's already so much. Can we have more? So using those like little bits on our own, and then we send it to devs, and they're like, okay, so maybe we can focus on this aspect in the next patch, or maybe this is more important for people than we thought about. So we gather all those things, even like simple messages from community, like our game is meaningful to many people, and they say like, oh, I love your game, I met my husband, I met my wife through your game. And we also send those to the devs because they sometimes are hard, and this is a message to uplift them, that what they do, what you guys do, is actually very meaningful, not just for you as a developer, but also for people who play those games. And it actually means a lot. And as Marcin said, they might be just lurking on our socials, but they send this one message, and that message will stay with you for much longer than someone who is sending like thousands messages each day.
Yeah, and if I may, speaking of sending us stuff, like we also have a very soft spot in our hearts for physical stuff. That is unfortunately more rare and rarer with each day. But I'm sure all of you know we have a special place, a room in our office where we store all those physical letters, the fan-made creations, you know, sculptures, and all the other cool things that people send us. And some of them are even displayed around the office. Right, we have the Eridan's hat sculpted from stone. We have some wood carvings. Sorry, we have a lot of different things that are displayed around the office because they just mean so much to us.
It's always a special moment too when you're sending us the messages from the fans, which are heartbreaking sometimes. Sometimes there are just amazing stories that people share about, you know, what happened in their life when they're playing our games. It's always you forward it to us, we read it as developers. It's just, you know, like it makes us feel that we are making a meaningful stuff, something that is very special for those people. And a lot of companies are outsourcing the community management to the external companies. What is the biggest and true value of having the community team inside the company?
So, in my opinion, there are two layers to this. The first layer is definitely part of being the culture, being, you know, a regular employee in the studio and living, breathing by the same values, by the same standards, and you know, knowing the developers, right, working hand in hand on stuff and just having good communication day-to-day basis. And then the second layer is, which is very important in today's day and time, is the reaction time, honestly, because quite
Okay.
often when you're working with an external partner, yes, they can be, the best there can be, but there will always be that delay, right? Like when we're sitting side by side and like I can just walk to you and just we can have a conversation about this issue that we're having right now and what we can do about it.
Yeah.
It's always much faster, much more rapid than just, sending an email or sending a message, waiting for someone to get back to you. And so those two combined, there's obviously a lot of different factors, like they're probably smaller, but to me, these two play the biggest part when it comes to advocating for having an in-house community team that is responsible for, communicating with your players around the world.
And I think it's also like also the personal level. Like I feel like that's why our Discord is so alive, because we are there. Obviously, we're faces of the company, but like people feel more engaged and I think more happy when they see actual person from the studio responding to their even the weirdest comments, right? Or like just saying hello. I think this means much more to them, and you wouldn't be able to do it via agency or external partner.
I think it also makes it more genuine. I feel like if it's coming straight from someone who is an employee of a studio that, and you're playing that game or you're admiring what they do, is like having someone come out from the studio actually talk to you is like, it feels a little bit like being starstruck. And I'm gonna use this story that I always use whenever Marcin's in a room and I'm in a room and we're recording something. Is like I joined the community team 10 years ago. As an assistant in the team. I was working with you. And I remember I joined at the time when I was playing The Witcher 3. And before I joined, I had a problem. I had a bug. It was before patch 1.08 for The Witcher 3 Wild.
Great memory.
So it's a good memory. Yes, good memory.
So no wolf chest.
It's a good story. So I was in the part of the game where you're in Kaer Morhen. You're supposed to talk to Lambert, but there was this bug that Lambert would collapse, go underground, and you couldn't interact with him. And I wrote that on the forums. I'm like, I have a problem with this bug. Is there any like ETA? I wasn't expecting anything. I wasn't expecting an answer. Marcin actually answered that, said like, oh, it's coming in the update that is coming at the end of this month. And I was like, wow. I contacted out of the blue on the forum, and I got a response from CDPR, whose games I have been playing since Witcher 1. It's like mind-blowing. And I know before that, whenever I would send any type of bug reports or whatever, I would go to like a automated thing and talk to a no name, let's say, and then kind of feel like my problem wasn't even handled. And I didn't get a proper interaction. Here I was like surprised that there's so much like, thought put into this, and that the people who are coming in from the community you feel seen. That's what I'm trying to say here throughout like all this whole story time. So this was very cool. And this is something that really sold me initially on what CDPR does for players. And then from that point on, I was sold. So yeah.
I mean, it's also like the story of Ryan from our German team, right? He was a fan of Gwent, and I remember meeting him at one of the Gamescoms. We had King, who was also like part of the
our Korean
community. Yeah. And they're like still here, and they're actually employed and doing the same job.
Yeah. But on the other side
as
now,
us. Yeah,
but we're all connected by that one good experience that we had, and kind of defined us and how community management should be done.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's incredible that quality is still there. Like we're keeping that.
But yes, but it also started with you being part of the community. So kind of tied into what I said in the beginning. Like you played the game, you liked it, you decided to engage with us, and now like you're here. Like we're all together.
Yeah.
However, as we grow as a company, it is more and more difficult, because we get a lot of messages. We get a lot of contacts from all over the world in a way that our community is growing, which is great, and we are growing as a team. However, there are let's say some challenges related to that, because again, like it's much harder to get back to every message.
Yeah.
Simply put.
And now it will be even more hard because we became a multi-project studio. So there are projects running at the same time, patches being released all the time, some additional content, etc. So there's more and more interaction happening. So what is the moment when the community team is being engaged into the new projects?
I think like even Like, let's say Phantom Liberty, right? It was months before the release, and even months before we kicked off in internal campaign planning.
Yeah.
We could play the game, so we know what's there. And it's not about like just us planning the campaign, but actually knowing the game. Because like, imagine if someone is reaching out to you, asking question about, I don't know, is this person this and that, or like, how can I adjust my talents or something, and you don't know, then there is a problem. You as a community manager who is talking to players, you should know those things. So we often like to sit down and play the game, even if the game is like all gray blocks, but the plot is there. Like quest lines are implemented, stories implemented, so we know things. It's not just for the campaign,
So you
but
know the
actually
game
for us
from
as
the
well.
ground up, right? From the
Pretty
beginning of the
much, yeah.
development, like you see how it changed, how it evolved, you know what kinds of changes were implemented during the production, so you can better also, for example, respond, and you have the whole context answering the questions of the community or forwarding their feedback to us.
Yes. And we can still report bugs if there is something that's not working in our minds, like maybe this shouldn't be like that. So we can also be useful for developers.
Yeah, I think that's one of the greatest thing about our company is that, like, basically, you know, obviously, yes, we have procedures, we have workflows, we have pipelines for everything. However, if there's something that's really of importance to the community, you know, you can just reach out to one of the designers and be like, hey, you know, like, we're really having a problem with this. Like, I would like to escalate this. I would like to make sure that this gets brought up, and you can actually succeed. So everyone is just approaching, the issues that are at hand with an open mind and with the proper attention. So that's why I love working here, and I think everyone is just bonded by this one goal to, like, really deliver meaningful experience for the players. And if there's stuff that needs to be fixed, we work together on fixing it.
I think this has always been kind of the core value of CDPR, is kind of like, we have it as the values, like, always remember about gamers, but it's always been that way. If it comes down to how we do our products, how we kind of interact with the community, like through every aspect, when it comes to us as a company, we always have gamers in the forefront, so we're kind of always thinking about them. So that's, I feel like super important. And like you also mentioned, I remember when I worked on Gwent, we always had to like know how every card interacted and worked. So you really need to be a jack of all trades. You need to like know everything. And it must be more difficult now, like Pavel mentioned, like we're doing multiple projects. But apart from that, we're also doing a lot of things that kind of expand the franchise. We're doing the animes, we're doing board games, we're doing a TCG, we're doing multiple other things. We're also doing a lot of collaborations, having our characters go into different games and stuff like that. So it's really just more and more and more interactions and more communities from different places coming into our community and kind of seeing the people that are already there. So it's just like the scale seems like it's like it's ever growing. Yeah. Must be incredible too.
Scale is one of the things that I think changed a lot. It's just like over the recent years, and both in terms of the fandom and how many people we have in our community. When I joined, we only had people who were into The Witcher 1 and Witcher 2, because it was before The Witcher 2, right? So people who were anticipating the second part of Adventures of Geralt. And then over the years, we started having people who are really into cyberpunk, and they might not necessarily care about The Witcher, right? But we still, we also have people who are into both franchises, right? We also have people who are only into anime and they just watch the runners, right? So it's awesome that we have so many people who have all these interests, and some of them, they share them. Some of them, they're just like really into their thing, and that's beautiful as well, because they came here, they chose to support us, they chose to be part of this community, and I think this is great.
Yeah, I also like that you have a platform to kind of talk with the community. If it's like you mentioned, if it's forums, if it's Reddit, if it's any type of social media like Twitter or X, Facebook, and all that. There's just more and more also communities on different social platforms that you get to interact with. But one thing I kind of want to touch upon, this wasn't in the original script. What I think is also very cool is that you set up a tone of voice very early on when the project is starting, where you kind of define how the social media will actually talk with the community. So I want to kind of touch a little bit on that, because we saw that the tone of voice, for example, for The Witcher was a little bit different than for Cyberpunk because of the different setting and how different the two games were. So can you talk a little bit about this process and kind of like, how do you define how The Witcher speaks versus how CDPR speaks versus how
Yeah,
Cyberpunk speaks.
it's a team effort.
Mhm.
That this is something I can start with, and also to tap into the question of how and when we are involved into the game dev process. So basically, when we learn more about, obviously with The Witcher it was easier because like Witcher was already there. With Cyberpunk it was a bit more
Mhm.
challenging because it
Yeah.
was a new franchise for us, so we had to learn more about the source material. We had to learn more about the game and then figure out, okay, how can we match what is happening in that world? How can we talk like, a bit like the characters? How can we be relevant to the audience, so when they finish the game, they go and check out what's happening on our socials, new patch coming or whatnot, that they don't like immediately get like taken out of the immersion, but this is sort of like an extension,
Mhm.
right? Obviously we don't really want to go all way overboard and be like cringy or whatever, right? I mean, obviously, as with everything, sometimes it happens, unfortunately. But thanks to everyone's feedback, we do better and we try to implement it.
Course correct.
Yes. So it's something that we design at the beginning before the campaign kicks off, and then we start working on it. Obviously, the tone a bit adjusts and changes as the campaign progresses, and thanks to the feedback from players and also internally. But I think it's an iterative process.
Mhm.
Honestly, like the foundation is there, but we don't hesitate to also, as you said, correct the course and see if there are any adjustments that need to be made. Because we really, again, like we don't want to take it too far, and we
Mhm.
first and foremost want to be engaging for the community. We want to be insightful for them. We are, as you said, like we're the link between the studio and and the players. So whenever someone is going to check out the patch notes, yes, they should be lore friendly, sometimes in character, but first and foremost they should be informative. They should be like a good resource for them to see, okay, well, that bug I really wanted to be gone from the game is now fixed. Cool, I can like identify that immediately. So yeah, there's like really a lot of work that goes into prep work way before the campaign even starts, and then once we're actually in the campaign, there's a lot of work as well that goes behind the scenes, again, that we just work on stuff.
When the game is finally released, you said that you were getting feedback. So
Yeah.
can you share some examples of what kind of feedback taken from the community was actually implemented in the game?
So I think one of the biggest changes that we actually did implement to Cyberpunk was our photo mode. We've seen the potential of our tool, and we've seen the potential of our devs, like what we can do more to make it better and bigger.
Yes.
And obviously the community who was making those screenshots, and they still are making those screenshots. Sometimes I actually have to look very closely. Is this a screenshot? Is this maybe like a
Yeah.
proper picture?
It's
Because we
incredible.
have talented people within the community. So for, I think, one of the last patches, I think 2-3 patches ago, we did contact several content creators in the virtual photography field and ask them like,
Yeah.
what can we do to make it even better? What's there missing? And they provided us their feedback. We did share it with the team, and we actually got all the changes that they wanted implemented. Sometimes in the first patch, sometimes we added a few extra things in the latter patch, but it's there. Radio station is, I think, the other example that I know people wanted to listen to radio while walking on streets, so not
Yeah.
just in the car.
Not in the car.
It's
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
So that for sure. And The Witcher 4, not The Witcher 4, The Witcher 3.
Oh, whoa,
We-
whoa,
we
whoa,
will
whoa.
get there
We'll get
eventually.
there.
Spoilers.
But like for Witcher 3, again, the next gen update, like the mods, like we do hear our community when it comes to mods on consoles, and we do hope it's finally coming at some point. So we do listen. Sometimes it takes more time, sometimes it's faster, but it's there. And I
Yeah.
think like photo mode for me is like the biggest one.
Yeah, huge shout out to the virtual photographer community, because these guys are amazing and so talented. And I think regarding Cyberpunk in general, the whole post-launch support has
Yes.
been very much, influenced by the
Mhm.
feedback from the community. The metro system, right,
Mhm.
which we finally
Mhm,
added.
yeah.
The whole UI overhaul. There's a bunch of changes that came with Phantom Liberty, right? The
Minimap
perk,
changes, I remember.
exactly,
Yeah.
minimap, perks redesign,
Yeah.
talent redesign, and also the police system, right? The whole AI, right? So there's a lot of things that were, thanks to the feedback from the community, and I think
Yeah.
that's beautiful.
It's just amazing because there's just we are a limited amount of people that are just working on a game for years, 5-6 years sometimes, and we sometimes just get used to some things that are problematic, but we don't consider them as being problematic, and then we finally release it to the players, and there's all this feedback is just like you just well, it was obvious, but we didn't even thought about fixing something. It's amazing to get this amount of people playing the game, testing it, giving their opinion. After all, we are making this game for them, right?
Yep.
But the photo mode was also, I remember that because we are artists. We made a game. We thought we mastered it, but then we are getting stuff from the community, which was just
Yeah.
amazingly beautiful for us also, right? And people just finding this, like street photography, proper beautiful shots, photographing characters. I remember, I think there was this receptionist from Clouds.
Yeah.
It was just an appearance. I made it, and I just I'm just bashing appearance now, appearance editor, putting there. I was not putting that much attention even to it, and then when I saw this character in a photo mode, like absolutely beautiful in this context, and people were crazy about it.
She's one of the community favorites,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. So it's amazing, actually.
Same with Aurora. Actually, there is like so many beautiful portraits of Aurora.
Yeah.
Like we definitely have talented community when it comes to virtual photography, and it's just like mind blowing
Yeah.
to wake up. Even today, after the PS5 Pro update, I was scrolling through Twitter earlier this morning, and I saw one of our core virtual photographers posting pictures after the patch, and I was like, dude, it's not possible. This is game.
Right.
But really, let's give a shout out to all the other pillars of the fandom,
Yes.
because like we have illustrators, we have people who cosplay, and how about
Oh,
you
man.
as a person who worked on characters
Very close to my heart. Yeah.
exactly
Yes.
like to create characters that resonate so deeply with
Yeah.
people, to create the costumes and bring them to life is just amazing.
Yeah.
But we can also kind
Yeah.
of bounce it back to you because you guys do the cosplay guys also, which kind of let people who are maybe getting into cosplay don't know how to like design a certain character. They have all the close-ups, they have all the renders, the models. It's all like super high resolution. So there's like you can see like all the seams and all the connecting tissue and
Yeah, yeah.
everything, and you know how to like
Mhm.
bring that
Yeah.
back. So what you've always been very good at is like whenever we launch a game, there are guides always coming out
Yes.
on time, and people can like, oh, next event you go to, you have people cosplaying this and that character.
Yeah,
which
I
is
remember
really
for
cool.
for Cyberpunk, I think it's been pretty smooth. But like, if you remember how it was for The Witcher 3, where we were, releasing some of them even before the game came out, and some of the stuff was still in the works, let's say, and we were, trying to put those cosplay guys together. It was fun memories. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's great. We always try to design the costumes in the characters in such a way that they can be cosplays, right? So
Yeah.
it's easy to recreate. So we don't use rubber armors and etc. And then it's
Exactly.
just fantastic to see those things being executed in real life on real photographies with real people. That's something
been
we
always-
enjoy a
yeah.
lot. Always in
It's
our
been
team.
always cool to talk to cosplayers because they were also saying like for like the characters that you guys do, like they're very cosplayable. Like
Yeah.
you
That's
can
the
actually
intention while doing it,
like
yeah.
sew this whole costume
Mhm.
together, and you can actually wear this, and it works, right? It of course was different maybe for the Wild Hunt, I know, but we had like super experienced people in the community that made
They
these
made it.
armors and stuff like
Yeah.
that and wore them. So it was also like
Mhm.
incredible to see these things just like come to life. And whenever you go to an event, you have awesome cosplayers, and let's say you're doing any type of like hands-on or just like a community gathering and people are coming dressed up, that's so cool always,
Yeah.
right? So it's like you see
Actually-
the passion.
This is like, to me, because one thing is to see them online, but when you actually meet a cosplayer in person at an event, like, it just blows my mind when I see the level of detail,
Yeah.
when I see the craftsmanship and the passion when I talk to these guys. It's just so amazing, and it just it totally makes my day every time I meet someone from the community
Mhm.
who puts so much work and effort and time into bringing these characters to life. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not always about just the costume itself, but like we had cosplayers of Lizzie Weezy, and I'm like, when I saw the first cosplayer in Lizzie Weezy outfit, I was mind blown because she was actually wearing steel on herself, and I was
Oh,
like,
really?
that has to be so heavy and so uncomfortable. But she was smiling all the time. She was at the event all day wearing this exact costume. So there's also passion,
Yeah.
not just for like costume, but general characters, even before playing the game, because that was even before the release. So it's not just only about the regular clothes and regular cosplay, but like also those big, I think on PerCon last year, we had Leshen doing a cosplay. This is also like
Which is like huge.
huge.
Yeah. Yeah, it just shows the dedication of the
Yeah.
community that is around the game. Circling back to sentiment and kind of tracking what the community is saying, do you have a certain tool or a certain way that you gather sentiment and you kind of sift through all the things and define like, okay, this is the highest priority? And kind of like if you take an example out of game development, you have your P0s, you have your P1s, P2, and down the road. How would you kind of track it when it comes to the sentiment that is coming through the community? Because as we know, social media, there's a lot of opinions, there's a lot of sentiment there, positive, negative, neutral. How do you track all this, and how do you distill what's the most important thing here?
It's the tricky part because, as you said, there's a lot of voices out there, and obviously, as people who are responsible for listening to what people are saying, we obviously constantly try to monitor it. We have tools, and we have the cadence that also is relevant to the, let's say, the time period we are in, because obviously we have recurring reports that we supply the teams with, but also, let's say, we release a patch. So shortly after the patch has been released, we try to see what are the top issues, what are people are talking about on social media, and what are people talking about on our community channels. And together with the player experience team, who are also responsible for taking care of the requests of players reporting the bugs, we are distilling what is the let's say the highest priority, and then we are submitting that stuff to the dev team. So that's how it is in a nutshell. And obviously, again, when we are, let's say, around the launch of the game, or like right after the launch of the game, so this is when the reports are a lot more frequent. We're like closely monitoring what is going on with the game, what are people talking about, right? But when we are in between campaigns, let's say, we obviously, yes, we do monitor it, but then we focus on like patches and bigger beats, and then we just like monitor what, other than that, like whatever is happening in the community, just like, as a usual business, everyday stuff.
It's also very important during the development that sometimes on purpose we are just putting some stuff in our gameplay footage or trailer, something we just want to see what's the reaction of the community actually. Do they like it? Is it right? And those are very, I wouldn't spoil here very specific moments, but this is also a very important development tool for us, just checking the sentiment of the people the first time we're showing something.
Yeah, especially very important for, let's say, characters that are being brought to life, or some other parts of game world. So yeah, for sure. Yeah.
What about if the developer or the company wants to somehow communicate something? So we're talking about sentiment, that we're gathering information from something that we've put out to the community. What about if we, as CDPR, want to test something or actually ask something the community? Like what means you would use in order to say, like, I don't know, do you think an update this and that, maybe we should introduce this and this and that? Like, what do you guys think? Have you done things like where you're kind of gauging the sentiment before we introduce something, or maybe we want to communicate something as a company to the players?
We haven't really been doing direct questions like that, but we do support our UX lab
Yes.
with let's say, promotional efforts to help them advertise the playtesting sessions, and to help bring players on board and help us test our projects, upcoming projects. So I'd say that we're rather working into this direction.
Yes. And if we're working with a partner, we don't necessarily do polls when it comes to like, oh, would you like to have, I don't know, keyboard or a mouse, right? But we suggest that if they want to test their waters on their channel, this is also the way to go. But like as Martin said, we don't necessarily do that.
When it comes to overall communication, though, you use your platforms and the reach that you have as a community team that you built in order to send out a message, let's say, that is coming in within the company. So maybe this is kind of how I was trying to phrase this
Okay.
question also.
Okay. I mean, a lot of as we said, like we're the link between the company and the outside world. Let's say when it comes to the players, right? Because there are also other departments communicating with the external world. However, when it comes to the communication to players, it's us and the PX team, right? Player experience. So it's so quite often when someone wants to communicate something, they just come to us, and then together we craft this messaging, right? So as you said, like it can be biz dev, it can be partnerships team, right? It can be marketing. We can be talking to a UX lab. There's just many different departments. We also do stuff that it's not really talked about that often, but we also do trainings for our employees when it comes to using social media and appearing on them, right? Because again, as we all know, right, like we have our company accounts, but also some of our developers, some of our folks are active on their social media. So this is where we come in when it comes to making sure people have as smooth of an onboarding as possible when they start interacting with the community that's out there, right? So that's also one other aspect that's worth mentioning here.
I guess also preparing people for going for conferences, for example, or before the game's release, teaching them what they can say, what they shouldn't.
When it comes to the social media aspect, yes. Because the interviews, that's actually done by the PR team and the media fluency team. That's part of Pavel is part of. However, we are focusing on the social media aspect, so the online, let's say, realm of it.
And we also send messages to our developers, to everyone, like, hey, we know this is happening. We know you're excited, but please wait, for example, for the official communication. So you don't send the wrong message as well.
I think this is a good problem to have because everyone is just so excited to work in our company that they would love to just
shout it out.
Yeah. I mean, quite often I've been here 15 years, but quite often I'm very frustrated. I cannot say something, and that's just the way it is. Unfortunately, when you work with secret stuff, you have to play by the rules.
Sounds like a crisis management.
I don't know. How did you make that association, Pavel?
I mean, someone wrote something they shouldn't, or someone thought something about the game.
I think
that's
Pavel
not true.
naturally wants to move on to the crisis management.
I
communication and community.
I sense that. I kind of sense that. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, as you might as well guessed, it's tough, right? And the more you interact with folks, the more prone you are to actually post something or say something that may be taken not the way you would like for it to appear. So yeah, there were situations like that, but also like positive situations as well, right? I mean, I think it's quite interesting that the fact that we have so many eyeballs on everything we do, everything we do. Like someone might tweet that tomorrow is going to be an exciting day for me. And people will think that, we're about to drop a new trailer for, our unannounced game or announced, doesn't matter, but still, So it really, you have to be careful. That's why also we have these trainings, right? To make folks realize how much anticipation and how much excitement there is out there. It's a great thing. And it like helps us, to actually create things here on the inside. And like we all love it and we feel the love, the energy, both online and when we go to the events. However, you also have to realize that because of all that, what comes with it is managing expectations. So this is something where you have to be like super, super careful with. And sometimes it's easy to get carried by the hype. But unfortunately, sometimes you have to say, hey, like this feature, unfortunately, it's not going to be in the game. And that way you kill some anticipation, but you help managing expectations. And then in the end, you help avoiding, let's say, a bigger disappointment. Yeah.
But it's also transparency and openness. I feel like it's super important whenever you craft any type of communication, especially that is going out to players. Like, don't try to like tell someone that something might happen or is a possibility, because you can just nip it in the bud and just say like, this is not going to happen. Sorry. But if this ever changes, like you always kind of, whenever we craft communication, we kind of always leave a door open just in case something might change in the future.
Yeah.
But if we know that something won't happen, I think it's better just to say openly that it won't happen instead of trying to like drag someone and say like,
Yeah.
oh, who knows, maybe, oh, I don't know.
Yeah, but that is also like for me personally, number of times where someone asks about it, I'm like, okay, I know we're gonna do this, but I'm not 100% sure it will stay in the game. I would like to confirm it, or
Yeah.
maybe with the caveat that okay, we're working on this, we're not sure. But if you say this, then later on, like people will get excited,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then some folks might forget that we also said that this is work in progress, and they know like it's also so it's
grows. Yeah.
it's really a tough situation. But again, like number of times I would love to give a straight answer, and we just can't because it's an iterative process, right? We all know, and things can be here today and then the next day they're just not here. Yeah.
How do you keep the community engaged and going in between campaigns? Because we know sometimes we launch stuff, but there's this always, like, since we work on AAA games, there is this long period of a waiting time before a game is ready, before a campaign starts, where we can start actually openly talking about the game, start putting out trailers and other assets, like, you know, all the graphic stuff. Like, what do you do in between? How do you keep the community engaged? I know there's people in the community who will be engaged even if you don't post anything. They still will be there, showing up every day. It's like, where's my source of information? How do you keep these people also happy?
I think for me, what's the most important part is to be visible. So I'm gonna give example again, like our Discord server. Even to my fellow colleagues in a team, I always try to say, just come and say hello. That's all what they need to be there, to like talk about things. And if you see like a comment or to like, I don't know, someone watched the movie that you watched during this weekend, just say something, like comment on that. And I'm very proud that our interaction as community managers, so not like brand as well, but like as community managers, we are real. We are showing we are humans. It's not like behind this, I'm sorry, PR team, but like this behind PR curtain that, you know, you always say the right words.
So connecting on the human level.
Yes, it's like people like to speak as human to human, as friend to friend. And this is that I love about our community, that they treat us as their friends. And they sometimes come to us saying like, oh, I have this problem and I know you can help me with, whether it's a game problem or community related problem, because sometimes there is a drama and they just need to be heard. So I think just trying to show you're there for them, you're human, even if nothing is happening, just say hello. And
say what you had for breakfast. Maybe they had the
For
same thing and there's a
example.
connection there already, right?
For example, people are coming to our social media channels showing like, oh, I did those screenshots. And, you know, we like to comment on those things like, hey, great job. Or like, you know, I'm just about to start the very first gameplay of Witcher 3. Like, dude, like, well done. Like 10 years later, enjoy.
You're going to have a blast.
So we try to do those things. We obviously lurk not only on our socials, so like our official channels, but like we have those groups on Facebook that we know they're there. We lurk on them as well. I know
Spying
several
on them.
people are there. And sometimes, you know, obviously we see the conversations. And sometimes, yes, we jump in like saying, oh, I also watched this. Or I actually don't agree that maybe this character is better than this one. So it's all about the connecting with people like in those moments. But when nothing is happening, I'm very proud we have our Fun at Friday that we always feature our community. We look for fan arts, cosplays, drawings, screenshots, whatever, to showcase. And our Jira is always well planned in advance, like what we want to show. And
Thank you, Amelia, for doing this.
And we still look for ways to showcase them even more. Especially that, nothing is really happening right now, right? Why not to showcase our community and their work more before crazy times start?
But I know there's also the whole lineup of events during the year that's happening in Poland and other countries, for example, that are like this, like 1st April, for example. They happen every year, and we are trying to prepare something special. And once I saw the lineup of the design team who was making illustrations for you for the social medias, and it was incredible. They have so
Long
many,
line
and
of-
it's a long line of
Yeah,
things
we
over the
try
year.
to make something cool for everyone, and also like the illustrations, like we
Mhm.
try to prepare bespoke illustration pieces for different, let's say, occasions in different countries, different
Mhm.
regions, right?
Yeah.
Because our community is international. We communicate in many languages, and we try to be as inclusive as possible when it comes to making sure that folks feel welcome to our
Mhm.
community.
Mhm.
So for sure, yeah.
What are your favorites moments in the year? In the year, like the Christmas card, for example, that's my favorite. I always enjoy the whole process of creating it.
Do you have
It's-
like
it
a
takes-
favorite, like let's say, I don't know, because we used to do things for specific
Mhm.
seasons that
Yeah,
were kind of
yeah.
in the Witcher. You started doing
Mhm.
now things for birthday for main characters from
Yeah.
Cyberpunk and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
Is there something that kind of like
Mhm.
comes to your mind that was like, oh, this was really cool that we did this?
Amelia?
Ah, like from, let's say, small things, I really like those illustration for Mother's Day and Father's Day.
Oh,
Um, because I know how much family means to our players. So we've seen a lot of messages like, my dad showed me this game, or my story, for example. I remember my uncle playing video games and I was sitting next to him watching.
Mhm.
So I know those illustrations always get, I think, one of the most positive sentiments when it comes to our connection. But like bigger projects, I think ARG was my favorite. Like I had so much fun designing all the clues and then watching people like
Mhm.
looking
Decipher
for
them?
those
Yeah.
like little things and
Mhm.
finding things we didn't even hide anywhere. And they were like, oh, this must be a clue, or this must mean something. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. So, and even if we don't
Mhm.
do have ARG like active, when we post something, and I know our design team likes to add those like random numbers on graphics,
Mhm.
there's always like, what does it mean? Is there
They're
a
not
secret
random.
message? Why is it actually there, not like in the other corner? So I think, yeah, that would be my favorite.
Yeah, especially for Cyberpunk. Sometimes
Yeah.
they are not random, but sometimes, most of the time, I think they are. It's
Yeah.
just a matter when we are starting or in a phase of another like ARG, then yes, this is then there's a deeper meaning behind that for sure. Yeah. I think Christmas card would be probably also my favorite if I had to say, and then Lunar New Year. I always
Yeah.
love
Those
what our
illustrations
illustrations,
are crazy cool.
crazy stuff, super talented people, always coming up with like really nice ideas. So yeah, for sure.
So when it comes to now moving in, since we used to kind of work in a way, we finished Witcher 3, we did Gwent as a standalone, then we did Cyberpunk, and now we're moving into a place where we're doing multiple IPs. We're also doing multiple different franchise related stuff. How do you like manage to keep communication going out for all these things at the same time? Like, 1 minute you're doing stuff for The Witcher, then you need to do something for Cyberpunk, and then you need to promote, I don't know, any type of like new clothes drop, let's say that we have at the gear store or something like that. And there's just like multiple things happening at the same time. How do you keep all that together and planned, and what goes out when, and when does that go out? How do we not have these things clash between one another? We shouldn't be probably posting things at the same time because there's like some people want to follow everything. Like, how do you manage all these things? And this is like an ever growing thing because it's
Yeah.
not getting smaller, it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
It's a lot of teamwork
Yeah.
and a lot of effort.
And a lot of Jira.
And the team has also been growing rapidly,
Yes.
right? There's
Yes.
just more and more people joining just to kind of like divide the workload, I would imagine.
Yeah, so we currently have 23 people
Yeah.
in our team, so
Mhm.
we are pretty big.
Nice.
We have obviously our international team taking care of the regions. We have global team, and it's always like one person or two people leading kind of the project, so they are main contact people. And then we just like we look at Jira at the calendar and we say like, okay, so we need to place those puzzles. We need to make sure it works. And if we see this puzzle doesn't necessarily fit on Tuesday but fits on Friday, then we make the decision. We need to move it to Friday. We're sorry, but it is what it is because we actually already have, I don't know, patch drop on that day. So we need to focus on that.
Yeah.
So even though the team on the global side is also big for English speaking channels, we also need to like see what's actually important and what can be moved to later or maybe earlier as well. So
Yeah, and it all depends where we are in the campaign,
yes.
because as we talked before about involvement in the stage of campaign, but also whenever we are, let's say, like, we have our calendar of like the main assets, let's say, right? So we're announcing the game, there's a trailer, there's some, additional components to it, then fast forward, right? There's launch, there's a bunch of stuff happening, but like in between those phases, right? Obviously there's pre-orders and all that stuff. So in between those phases, we need to have our tailor-made community activities there as well that are, have, like, we've been preparing for those for like months. And obviously there's day-to-day stuff that, Pavel, that you mentioned as well, like partnerships, like just pure engagement content for to keep people entertained. So there's a lot to juggle, and all that stuff needs to have proper place, proper timing. That's why I said, like, there's a lot of effort, and also I think our team has like really good internal communication when it comes to like, okay, let's just keep each other up to date, let's just keep each other aligned to make sure that, like, we can make the most out of it for players out there. Obviously, yes, misunderstandings happen, but we are a big company, and I think this is unavoidable. However, it's important to just stay connected and just like keep talking to each other, and just being able to rely on each other when it comes to working together on those projects and making sure that the communication comes out on time and is relevant.
Yeah. I think what also makes it a little bit more harder is if you think about, talking about multiple projects that kind of span across different franchises, you also have the aspect of having over 100 channels in 13 languages and communicating in all those languages and throughout all those channels, and keeping that still in line with the main comms that is coming out in English and Polish. That must be also difficult in terms of like keeping everybody aligned and knowing, like, I know how kind of the internal processes kind of work, but if you could talk about like managing this from this aspect of it.
So like I mentioned, we have project owner, let's say, and that person is taking care of like making sure we have copy, we have assets, we have translations if needed, right, in advance, especially if it's a bigger thing. And then we, like Marcin mentioned, like we give each other updates. So if there is a sudden change that we need to look at, that person is, hey, please, can you check it out? Like, because we adjusted something, if it's good or not. And then we give each other green lights, like, hey, this is good to go. That person actually has to follow our internal calendar. Hey, please, it's ready to go, or it can be scheduled, because sometimes things can be scheduled. And we take it from there. And so far, it's working pretty damn well, I would say. Like,
I just want to say that I'm incredibly proud of the team we've built, and as you mentioned, like 13 languages that we communicate with players around the world, and we feel like whenever there's like, this is one of our, let's say, a motto of sort. Like whenever there are players in a country that are willing to communicate with us in their language, we are trying to be there. We're trying to be there to make them feel heard, to engage in a conversation with them, and to also like localize our materials. Like however we're promoting the game, we're trying to make sure that, like, let's say we have a VO in like, we have a rule that like we have VOs, a certain number of VOs, so voice over languages in our games. We try to have a bespoke person, a dedicated person, a community manager, to engage with those players in that particular country, right? So because we want them to make sure that the assets that we have are just being there for the players, and also the players can count on that person to communicate with them, to hear them, to pass that feedback. Sometimes we have local issues that are arising, like certain localization aspects of the game that need to be addressed with the localization team, or things that are like really, really tied to specific versions of the game, which if we didn't have a person who speaks the language, we would not be able to address, right? So that is very important.
I also wonder, how do you handle working in all those time zones? Because we are in development, working with Boston, for example, which is 6 hours away, or Vancouver, which is 9 hours away, and that's it, right? And I think you're the most special team. You're working around the globe with the teams that are scattered around the globe. So
Yes.
how do you handle communication? Are there people you never met because they're on the other side of the globe, for example, you know?
Thankfully, to our quarterly meetings, we don't have
So you
people who we
gather
never met.
everyone.
we have the whole crew coming over, over 20 people. Actually, just not so long ago,
Mhm.
they were all here, and we were able to work all from the office. You know, talk about the plans and get a feel of like how it is to actually work in the office
Yeah.
in a larger
together in
group.
one
Yes,
space,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. So obviously there are challenges such as time zones, as you said. We have a significant number of people working from Asia, so they're
Yeah,
9
exactly.
hours ahead of us. We tried, and we need to be communicated in a way that we want to have meetings that everyone attends. So
Mhm.
we have agreed on a timing that more or less works on
Okay.
everyone.
All right.
So it's not too late for some, well, not being too
Mhm.
early for others. And this is, for example, when we have our weekly meeting that happens once a week, right?
Okay.
And obviously there are like other meetings and chats and calls and things that are required because we work on projects together, as Amelia said. So those are being arranged at also like appropriate times, so to make sure everyone is able to attend. But yes, it's like sometimes it's not the most convenient, but I feel like we've been able to make it work. So yeah, but it is challenging. It is challenging. However, we feel like we're doing a good job at it.
But even when it comes to releasing the communication on socials, we also agreed that there are certain windows, like time windows, when we can post those things, like when it makes sense for certain regions. So for example, when we're posting the collab with Korean community creators, we agreed that Korea goes first and then global follows. So we are adjusting because we know certain regions need their time as well, and obviously the time difference, and this is more relevant for Chinese community or Korean community, and we can just support them. And the same thing goes for global. Like we know our hours. So for example, like 4 or 5 p.m. is for global. But if this is not like a crucial asset, China, Japan, they can post it earlier. It's okay.
Yeah, there's flexibility because obviously if it's not something critical like a release of the game or
Yeah,
a
or a
patch
patch.
that we all align on and we agree on the set time, then there's a lot of flexibility and also right there's the science part of it where people know when they post like this, then there's the most engagement, right? The post performs the best, right? So we leave that space for them as they're the experts to kind of take over here.
All right.
How do you balance transparency versus how kind of game development is done in CDPR? We always very often hear mention that it's sometimes a very chaotic process. There's a lot of changes. There's a lot of pivots. We also very often talk about changes when it comes to releasing things because we need to work on something a little bit more, or we need to add something, or maybe get rid of something in an update. And how do you manage this transparency with, like you mentioned, the anticipation of players that is ever there waiting? So how do you find the balance? Like when to be transparent fully, when to say, oh, we need a little bit more time, or when do you know, like, okay, we can finally communicate this, it's ready to go, let's push the button, we know everything's going to go well, unless it maybe doesn't go well.
I mean, as I hinted in the a little bit earlier, I think that it's tough quite often because again, like we would like to say something and we cannot because again the situation may change and we might not have something in the game that is there today, tomorrow. But we also as we are a big company, there are a lot of layers of approvals, let's say. So whenever, for example, for easier things, when we're trying to confirm certain features to make sure that stuff is there, is going to be there and whatnot, we sometimes we have to go through multiple steps, multiple departments to make sure that everyone is aligned and we have a green light to communicate something, which obviously was not the case many years ago, like 15 years ago when I started, right? We were much smaller, right? That's even the fact that I was the only community manager back in 2011 and now we have over 20 people.
Yeah.
So things have changed. However, it's a constant constant, I'd say, conversation, ongoing internal process where we just have to balance it all out, and just also, like, we don't want to go into hiding, and we need to make sure that we keep communicating, right? And because it's like always the easiest, right, to just like pretend, oh, I'm not seeing this question. What? Oh wow. So to maintain the values that we've all agreed to follow, right, as a company, and to be open and transparent. And we try to sometimes, we have to sometimes take this extra step and make sure that, okay, maybe this is not the easiest question to answer, but we are well equipped to answer this. We just need to put a bit more effort. Maybe we need to talk to some extra people. Maybe we need to get some additional approvals for this. But we could answer this, and then people will be happy because they will learn that, hey, okay, oh, this is true, or hey, we're working on fixing this. Because again, like with working on patches, right, it's always the case that the team is working super hard to fix this, for example, a certain issue, but we can never be sure if it's going to be fixed, right? Unless it's already fixed. So then we can communicate, right? But this is the easy case. But sometimes there's something that's really prominent issue, and we are not sure if we're going to be able to fix it. And we would love to tell people that, hey, we're looking into this, we're working on it, right? So and it's better than just like pretending to not see it. So this is also something that I'm a firm believer of. Like, we really try to acknowledge, and sometimes even if we cannot answer, we try to give any sort of acknowledgement that, hey, we're looking into this, we're trying to figure out this, but like we obviously can't promise like if this will get addressed. However, we're looking into this. So that's how I see it. I don't know, Amelia, if you have anything else.
I mean, like we also try to build that trust with our community by, for example, showing early gameplay, right? So we have our streams about patches, right? Those are always before the patch drops. And it's easy just to sit down and talk about patch and saying like, oh, this car would look cool, and the other person will like, no, this one would look better. I think it's better to show it rather than talk about it.
Yeah.
So that's why on pretty much every hour stream about patch, there is always gameplay. It's always visible that this is, work in progress, early development, or like, beta development. So while it's still sometimes very difficult to get approval on like, hey, can we actually show it? Because we can see the reaction of people, like we will see if they're hyped, or maybe we need more work on that.
Yeah, something that
What's
Pavel
the
mentioned
reception?
earlier.
Yeah. So it's also important to showcase sometimes. And, I know it's difficult, and we would love to, show people like the actual thing, like the final version, MP4, whatnot. But sometimes it's worth showing even those, T-poses on a stream. People will see that we're honest and we don't have anything to show.
Yeah.
And obviously when times is right. So it's not like 6 months before the patch and, gray blocks and everything, but like when it's actually close to being ready.
Yeah.
And I think this is also important.
Yeah, for me that would be so stressful because whenever I have to post some, we are sending screenshots, or I'm writing a comment. I don't do that very often, but when I'm doing it and sending it, I think about all those eyes, all those people waiting, having some things they're waiting for, getting some information, and then when would there be any article created
There
from that?
will
Would
most likely be,
so
yeah.
stressful.
It's
So
easier
I
with time.
admire that a lot, that and whenever I see tweets, messages from CDPR being sent, they're bright, smart. It's always the best thing. I would never figure out how to answer those questions, and they're on point, all very often funny, and smart. So yeah, I really, really appreciate that.
On behalf of the
Thank
whole
you.
team, thank you.
Do you have any favorite standout moments or projects that you worked on, or something that you feel like you've kind of established throughout the years working in the community team that you would say like, oh, I'm super proud we did this, or I'm super proud we did that? Are there any things that kind of come to the top of your mind when you think about the projects you've done?
Growl effect.
Growl FM, yeah.
I was waiting
Yeah.
for that.
That's the crown jewel
Yeah.
of, I think, our work, and how it brought literally almost every department in the company to work together. All started as an idea of like, hey, let's have a radio station with some songs from the community, and then ended up being like a 2 years plus project that involved almost everyone, as in like every department, and ended up highlighting like really cool songs by artists, just from the community from around the world, and
great.
they are featured in the Phantom Liberty. And they like also like available in Cyberpunk base game, right? Because it was just like a radio station that was added, but the amount of work that went into it, and how the whole company, again, I will emphasize this because to me this is just mind blowing, how every department was able to work hand in hand. We worked with the audio team, right? Obviously, with the composers to pick the songs.
The final ones, yeah.
Yes, we worked then with our design team to create the covers, right? We also worked with the video team to create the behind the scenes.
And music tracks.
Yes, our legal, our accounting, our finance teams, were like preparing contracts for the artists. Like everyone, literally everyone in the company had their hand in this project, and to me, this is just, I think, like it just embodies what for the gamers, like remember about the players stands for, because we didn't really care that it would be hard, that it would take us years to accomplish, but we were just like, hey, let's do something really cool for our community. And we ended up doing it. And now every time you launch, I mean, every time I play Cyberpunk, honestly, I always put on Girl FM. I rarely listen to any other radio station. I might be biased, but I do that. So I think this is like a true testament of like what we can achieve as a company if we really all work together. And so like Growl FM for me, number one thing.
Yeah, Growl FM for me as well. And I've been part of Growl FM team, so there was just a lot of, blood, tears, and sweat.
Maybe not blood.
Maybe not blood, but like,
Fortunately.
but it was just a lot of work. And when you see the reception, you forget instantly. You forget about those tough 2 years with. Yeah,
But
discussing
also a
with
lot
legal.
of submissions, right?
We had like
Also-
A lot
8,000-9,000. How
Yeah.
many?
Something like that. And
It's a lot of songs.
and what was the coolest aspect of that, it wasn't just like one or two genres of music. Because you hear cyberpunk, you instantly go, okay, so it's synthwave probably, right? But we actually had everything. We had classic music, we had jazz, we had heavy metal, and I mean like real heavy metal. We had pop, we had techno, everything you wanted to hear. And it was just sometimes refreshing because you had like 5 techno songs in a row, and then you listen to like the 6th one and it was like completely different. And you could already like, you were constantly engaged with all those songs. And it was very difficult to pick because every
make a
single
selection.
person in the team, we made our short list like, oh, I like this song, I like this song. And then you combine them and it's like 200. And we need to pick 10.
Yeah, and composers also had their votes, right?
Yes.
And so it was really
It was definitely something.
but it was such a nice project. I think another thing I would like to point out is the streams, because this is something that started off in the COVID era.
Yeah.
So we are celebrating this year 5 years, right? 5th
Yes,
anniversary of this
in-
project that
in
you
September.
kicked off. Yeah.
Yes, streams is also something I'm very proud that we have as a team, because yes, we started at home in locked in. I remember the very first stream. I was streaming from my home. I had 2 PCs next to me. I have really small apartment as well, and it was very hot. I was very stressed. Like, what if something breaks and stream goes to hell? And we actually prepared months before that, so it wasn't just like a week before patch. We're like, okay, so let's do a stream. No, it wasn't. It was like 3 months or so. And we had Miles dialing in from Germany. We had Patrick from Warsaw, so it was international experience. And then when I look where we are now, we have like this amazing studio. We have really cool guests, and I think there's bright future before our streams when it comes to like what we can still do. We have our core community coming to those streams no matter what topic there is. The numbers are growing, so the project is successful, and I see people want to hear more. We're trying very hard to push our international folks to also do streams for their communities, right? Because not everyone speaks English, and our streams are live. So we cannot have subtitles. We can do it afterwards, but it's also still very difficult because it's like an hour long video almost every time. So we're working very actively to encourage our international community managers to also do streams, because this is like really something that people want, people like to watch, and I'm very proud because I like to think we're a benchmark of streams when it comes to like, again, trust and this transparency, showcasing the real gameplay, not scripted ones, having actual devs, like not just obviously public faces, but like QA as well, or people that, you know, work behind closed doors and nobody thinks about them, also come to stream and talk about their work, about his or her teams. This is like really, really cool for me to work on. And I'm very proud of the entire team who's working on streams, because it's not just only me. We have video team, we have our team, we have our moderators who also come to our streams, help us with a chat. So I think it's like 20 plus people effort. So
Also,
it's,
our amazing engineering team.
yes, our
yes.
video team who's, you know, making sure it's on point, and they always come up with extra ideas like, oh, maybe we can do smoke here, or we're gonna play with lights. And this is really cool because, you know, it makes you want to do more.
I think the quality is also
Yes.
very
Yeah.
important.
Yes.
There. Yeah.
And people, you know, we can always go back to streaming from home. Like it's easy, but like we wouldn't be ourselves to push that boundary even more and more and more. And we want to do more and bigger and better.
Perfect.
Okay. And can you share with us any kind of emotional stories you remember connected to the community? Something that's really touched you?
Or resonated with you? Kind of mentioned like some people met their other halves and stuff like that. But is there anything that kind of pops to your mind when it comes to cool emotional stories?
I think every story that was shared with us, whether it's on socials or in person or via email, you always think about those people, like whether, you know, they found their true selves via our games, or they met someone, or they remember about parent or brother or sister. Those stories stays with you, and it's very hard to pick one because there was way too many heartbreaking ones and really heartwarming ones as well. And I don't like to play favorites.
I will not single anyone out, but I will single one event out. And that is the 20th anniversary of our studio that we organized in 2022. That was in the HQ, and that was right after COVID, where everyone was still wearing masks. And we obviously, you know, took all the precautions when it comes to safety. However, you know, after sitting in our homes for 2 years and just being limited to only online, we came for this international, because we had people from all over the world. Literally, they flew in, the community members, to our HQ, and we had, you know, special cakes. We had like a Witcher cake, we had the studio cake, and we had
Gwent cake.
Gwent cake and the
yes.
Cyberpunk cake.
Yeah.
So we didn't have a studio
No,
cake.
we had 4. We had
Okay, so 4 cakes.
we
Okay,
had
so I
4,
remember
yeah.
right. Okay, cool. So yes, we had
We had
different.
a lot of cakes.
We had a lot of
It
cakes.
was a good day.
Yes,
It was summer also. It
yeah.
was very nice outside too.
We had a bunch of festivities happening around then. We even, I think,
We
showed
showcase
Edgerunners too,
Edgerunners, yes.
Edgerunners before the release. So there was a lot of cool things happening, and for me, just, you know, after being stuck at home for almost 2 years and not being able, like, there were no events basically, right? No
Yeah.
Gamescoms, no E3s and all the others. And when we were able to host these people here and to, again, like, you know, like really exchange experiences, talk about our games, that was also first proper event after the release of Cyberpunk. So to hear people like in person talking about their experiences and how much the game meant to them, and then also for The Witcher, this like really stuck with me, because again, to just experience this love, and you know, coming from all over the world, and just to be able to spend some time with these folks who are so clearly passionate about our games, it was just like a very, very defining moment for me, let's say.
Beautiful. All right. To wrap things up, I have one question and then a follow-up question to end it all. If someone's listening or watching this and they would want to get into community management or maybe think about becoming a community manager for a gaming company, what advice you would give to these people today?
Play video games. That's one thing.
I was waiting for that.
Yes. I mean, like, we're all gamers, and
Yes.
I know Marcin is very proud that we might play very different games within the team, but we play video games and we can exchange opinions and expertise and experience, or like, oh, this worked in this video game, this didn't, and how we can connect it. And
Or
obviously
they did this for their community,
Yes.
right?
So you form a community of other projects.
Yes.
Yeah, you could say that. You could say that.
Stepping
You
in the
Yeah.
shoes of a community.
And yeah, talk about those games online. Like
yeah.
if you are looking into our, like, for example, our team, you know, be active on social media, do your own portfolio, because this is still also important. Whether it's like, I'll give example of Basha. I hope she's watching, because she's doing very great job. Like she's running community as well on Facebook group. She's one of the admins, and this is pretty much the very beginning of being a community manager. Just try to manage your own community, whether you're streaming, I don't know, start your own Discord and then talk about your game and what you like to do and interact with people. And this is pretty much like the very, very easy beginning.
This is then very easy to, like, I don't want to say super easy, but like it's a very good base to be translated into the professional environment, right? Like to start working with your own communities, or start being, you know, an admin or a moderator on communities of like other games, let's say, right? And then you gain that experience, right? So this is a very, very good start to just be involved into what like really excites you, be part of those communities for those other games or projects or, you know, movies, whatever really floats your boat, but still like just start somewhere, have that experience and build up from it.
Perfect. Last question. I don't know if you'll like this one or not. If you had to describe the CDPR community in one word, what word would you use?
Passion. For me, it's passion.
Passion. All right.
I love those guys. Like really. I love
Lovely guys.
I love our community. I love our community. Honestly, like every time I like online, obviously, but like every time I meet someone from our community at an event in any part of the world, just so lovely, so passionate. I mean, like just by saying hi to someone and just like exchanging a few first words with them, you can clearly see that they just care so deeply for our games. That is just like really, really inspiring. And yeah, I mean, so yeah, I just like much love for our community all over the world.
I feel like love and passion perfectly sums up everything that is connected to our community. All right, that's it. Those are all the questions we had
Thank you
today.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you for
taking
having
the
us.
time. Yeah.
Our
you.
pleasure.
Yeah, it was a true pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for tuning in. It was a great episode about social media and community management.
And it has been a very, very deep look into how the team operates. Over 100 channels in 13 different languages, communicating everything that we do here at CDPR and talking about our games and building a community around it. But when it comes to community, remember the most important things are, as always, to comment, like, and subscribe. Let us know what you're thinking about the episodes, and we'll see you in the next one.